Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?
Well, good morning, everybody. This is Rob Godlewski with the Think Small podcast. And today we have a special guest, Mr. Chris Hewitt of Berkeley PR. Chris is the CEO and Chief Storyteller of Berkeley PR, based in the UK, but with offices globally. Chris, welcome to the podcast this morning.
Robert, it's great to be here, and I was wondering how to pronounce your surname, so thank you for. And now I've heard it from the horse's mouth. Good to meet you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's been a challenge all my life.
I bet it has.
With a tip of the cap to my Polish roots. So
good stuff.
Yeah. Well, Chris, tell us about this really interesting business you have. And I because I introduced you as Chief Storyteller, I know it's more than a business. This is your passion. So tell us how you got started in this line of work and then how you got to Berkeley PR.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, and a great question to start. I suppose my roots is in, I'm a journalist by trade, and I still see myself very much as a content creator. And both my parents were journalists. I'm married to one. So you can imagine that I do find...
Wow, you can't get away from it, can you?
No, one's no excuse. And I'm very passionate about how we can use the power of storytelling and narratives in order to make our businesses interesting. And the big motivation, frankly, was I used to be on the receiving end of so much self-congratulating, dull content from PR and directly from organizations that I thought, it would really make a difference if everyone knew what made a story in the first place. So I created a PR company back in '88, which has morphed now into, I describe us very much now as a storytelling agency. So we provide storytelling services through PR, still a good 50% of our business, but also across content creation, video, research, all manner of marketing communications is now what we are providing our clients globally. And the bit that I'm particularly passionate about is the Storytelling Academy, which is my baby, where I teach business people business leaders, marketers, how to harness the power of storytelling to bring a little bit of Hollywood to their world, I guess.
I love that. Wow, 1988. So you've really been doing this a long time. When did Berkeley PR actually start up?
That was then. That's the point.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Yes, I know. So the company's been around. I set it up in my back bedroom in a road called Berkeley Avenue in a place called Reading, which is about a half an hour west of London. And okay. I think I keep promising my wife that I might sell or merge or do something, but I just enjoy my life so much that I am still running the business and I still lead the company. But obviously, it's a much bigger thing than me in my back bedroom in Berkeley Avenue.
Sure. So, well, tell us about the business and your lifelong passion. What kind of customers do you serve, and what problems do you solve for them? And tell us about your global reach as well.
I think the problem for most small to medium-sized businesses, so we typically do work with anything from funded startup organizations through to companies that may have gone through first or second round funding. So in essence, these are what I describe as scale-ups, ambitious businesses, quite entrepreneurial enterprises who have an ambition to scale and scale globally. So I guess I see us as the antidote to the big global agencies that are basically unaffordable by these types of, typically a business owner and not a large enterprise. We do have some large enterprises as clients, he says apologetically, but essentially we are much more geared towards those who are seeking to grow their company and also to cut through the noise of other established businesses who may have deeper pockets. So hence the reason why storytelling is an interesting concept that I've built the agency around, because essentially what I've done is I've looked at what is it that actually makes a movie a blockbuster, or what keeps you turning the page of a best-selling novel, or what keeps you glued to your seat at the cinema or theatre. Well, there's a whole bunch of rules that these professional storytellers use. And what I've done is I've basically taken that process, I've re-engineered it, and I've made it relevant to businesses who typically reside in the B2B world. That's a big part of what we do. Tech is a big part of that sector of what we do. But of course, storytelling really, the whole point of it is about how we can humanize a brand or a business or a product in a way that's going to strike an emotional chord with the audience. Now, if that is a business and it's a business to business issue, still a human being we're talking to at the end of the day. So I describe this as B to H, business to human, whether it's a consumer or whether it's a CEO or a CFO or a CIO, it doesn't matter to me. They're all people. Not all of them, no. So seriously, they're all human and we should treat them as such. And that's how storytelling cuts through the noise. So we use these techniques from movie makers to make a product more engaging and interesting is not to talk about the product, but to find the
That's right.
drama that goes with the product. And that drama is normally found in the problem it solves and the consequence of not solving that problem. We sell problems, I guess is the way of looking at it. And if we can get the business owner, business leader, or marketer to realize that the product and it's less of interest than than solving the problem is, then we're halfway there. So but we teach this, but we execute on it. And as I said, we do this across all these different channels. From a PR perspective, is still a big part of what we do. And a lot of our clients are basically, we're a UK owned. I own the business and it's based in the UK.
Hmm.
But essentially, it's making sure that if we're bringing European businesses to North America, or we've got teams on the ground now in North America and New York, centered largely around New York, to work with local businesses or US businesses who want to come over here. It's any business that's seeking to scale up. We're the agency that will help them find their narrative, what I call their North Star narrative. And once we've got clarity over that message using the storytelling techniques I've talked about, we then can execute across all these different channels, from PR to social, digital, video. We have a research company inbound content marketing, lead generation, all of these services we have in-house now. So there's about 50, 60 of us now in the business.
Oh my goodness, that's great. That's
Yeah.
not a small PR shop, Chris. Um,
No, it's yeah.
yeah.
Tell me about it. It's a lot of mouths to feed, and in challenging times as well. So, but yeah, no, we are we're a reasonably sized business and probably quite a large one, as you say, from an independent perspective. We're not part of a big group. We are totally organic in the way that we've created our business. So we're in the UK, we're in North America, we're in another head office hub is in Munich in Germany, and the other one is in Sydney, Australia.
You've literally got the world pretty well covered in
We have
storytelling.
indeed. We have indeed.
Well, Chris, for owning and running the business for so long, you've seen every ups and all the ups and downs and rapid growth, but also some plateauing or even contraction of the business's revenue.
Mm.
Talk to me about a time when revenues were really negatively impacted by either something going on from a competitive impact or a global,
Mm.
geopolitical impact. How did you manage the business through that time, not only relative to the
Mm.
business perspective, but the human perspective as well?
Mm. Mm. Well, I mean, I've been running this business, as I said, for since '88. So I've been through, I think, 4 or 5 recessions now,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
getting the hang of them. I would say that certainly during most of them, we've actually done well as an agency. In fact, if you look back through our revenues, you'll see spikes going up with each recession. And there's one reason for that is that a lot of brands and businesses are looking for value. And therefore, as an agency of our size, we're much more agile and able to respond to that more so than perhaps a large global agency with big budgets who we typically compete against. So we've always seen sustained growth during these periods. However, more,
interesting.
yeah, sorry, Karen.
No, it's just interesting. So you were the recipient of another larger PR firm inability to hold a client during those
Indeed.
times.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
yeah, and Not deliberately. I mean, this is the interesting thing. It was only when I sat down not so long ago and I reflected and was looking back through the history and the revenues of the business. And of course, I started to think that was a difficult time for everyone. And I remember that I thought the revenues dipped, and then I looked again and realized actually no. And then when you start to map across our history with each individual recession, you actually see that's where we've had the highest rate of growth because
Interesting.
we are an alternative. I suppose this is it. We can't compete with smaller shops or freelancers who may be doing this things at a lower rate. But what we're good at is at the strategy messaging level, and we compete very, very well against the big global agencies. So we bring a lot of value and senior thinking to a project that you might not otherwise expect. When times are hard, we tend to rank and score more highly.
Hmm.
Having said all that, we haven't been immune, and I would say even right now thankfully we're now coming out of a very turbulent time when we noticed that the larger global accounts that we do have been destabilized as a consequence. Dare I say, tariffs had a huge impact. So when that first all kicked off, we had a whole bunch of clients that responded by putting the brakes on their PR budgets, and that
Hmm.
indeed affected us very quickly overnight. COVID clearly did. COVID was a moment in time when we suddenly were faced with very challenging times. But when we all went home and we regrouped, the strategy for the business shifted.
Hmm.
AI is obviously causing a lot of issues as well. A combination of AI and tariffs is our most recent challenge, where we've seen a lot of businesses either think they can do it in themselves, or there has been a squeeze on budgets because of geopolitical issues and the general destabilizing global economy, which continues to this day. We've shifted in fact, we had a meeting about this morning. The dependency on large clients we've shifted away from that because they've gone anyway. The two biggest clients we had went, and we saw a drop in revenues, and we have now managed to stabilize that by working with businesses now who are looking. This is why I'm focusing on scale ups, businesses who
Hmm.
may be either a startup but they've got funding, or scale ups because they're on a second or third or pre-IPO moment. We're at the more entrepreneurial sharp end of that client base, and we're retraining our teams. We're talking about that again actually this morning. We're changing the culture of the agency to recognize that we need to be much more driven by entrepreneurial instincts, and we're working hard with these companies, with these new brands, these new genre of clients. And I'm pleased to say that we're now, touching wood, stabilizing our revenues and now starting to see growth again. And dare I say it, next quarter we may even start be thinking around recruiting again. So I can say that we've had to pivot. We've had to re-skill our teams. But you've got to start first of all with the mindset that you can do this when you're used to replacing larger clients with more smaller ones. There's a shift in culture and mindset for everyone in the business.
So, Chris, that's actually a relatively common topic within the discussions I'm having with CEOs and business owners through this podcast, and that is pivoting the business and having the I guess the skills and the knowledge, but the confidence to pivot a business for whatever reason. Now, you were having a customer concentration challenge, and you realized that having larger clients, although they're great when you have them, they're very dangerous when they go away, and they tend to go away all at once. I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Yeah,
Whereas,
I think there's a lot of agencies that have been in very difficult situations where they've had what dependency of one client. 10% of their clients representing 80% of their income is very typical in our world. And you might have a client. We haven't had a single client who's more than 10% of our revenues, but we have lost more than one of the larger clients. So we're sitting here seeing a very substantial drop in revenues. we've had to respond very quickly and to pivot, as you say, to a
Hmm.
different way of working. And that's a cultural shift as much as it is a marketing shift, because the mindset of businesses, when we're working for very larger accounts on a global stage, we're now suddenly finding ourselves still the global agency, but working in country with these with smaller organizations and just being more joined up behind the scenes. Having said that, we have just recently won another big global account, literally in this last week. So, funnily enough,
Well, congratulations.
we're not against them, obviously, but we're now seeing some businesses coming back as well. So, I hope our strategy in the end will potentially be, a bit of both. And but certainly, we're not sitting on our laurels here.
Right. So how did you approach this culture change within your organization as you needed to pivot to a different customer group?
I think this is it's a really, really good question. I think it comes back. This isn't just a matter of retraining or reskilling our people. It is much more than that. There's basically three phases that we are going through, and we are continuing to go through right to this moment. The first one and quite often it's overlooked, is the mindset of the whole of the business from the top to the bottom to in terms of adjusting our thinking and belief that we can do this, that we can change, and that we can pivot and work with more entrepreneurial enterprises who want to scale. So there is a change in not just business process, but in mindset, that we can do this, that everyone can get excited by the opportunity and not see anything around this. Because arguably, when you see a downturn, you've got to deal with negative sentiment. Whereas we're saying, do you know what? This is the biggest opportunity now that we've had. It will be the making of us. So you can get what I'm saying. There's a shift in mindset and belief that this is going to be an exciting journey, and what it represents and what it means to the people, how we might recognize and reward people in future. All of these things, winning hearts and minds around a new way of working and is important, rather than to be worried about change. And that is what a lot of people are. They're worried about change. They're worried about AI. They're worried about what they're reading and hearing on the news. And we're saying, yeah, but we've got some great things going for this agency. Storytelling isn't going away. If anything, the human side of what we do is not going to be replaced by AI, although AI is a critical tool in our toolkit to amplify. It gives us more time to be more human with our clients and our story.
Huh.
So we see a big change in mindset. The second part is retraining, is reskilling, is new business processes around the services that we sell to our clients, because what you're selling to a larger global enterprise may be difficult to a company that's wanting an investor deck and needing help in the next 2 hours on a message. So there's a different mindset. There's not long approval processes. There's this dynamic change and shift in how we deliver our service, and what those services now look like are different. And so making sure that everyone has got the right information, the toolkits to recognize that the entrepreneur or business owner is very different to maybe a CMO of a large enterprise. We've got to recognize the dynamic shift there, and how to work with both now rather than one or the other. And then the third element is the execution of that. The media landscape, our clients, for example, it's not just about visibility in the media per se, it's also AI visibility. Buyers are using AI tools to find goods and services. So we are moving
Yes,
very
they
quickly
are.
with the times ourselves. So we are adapting to AI. In fact, we've just created our own story AI products, and we've got our own AI platform now. It's very exciting for us, but our teams need to know about it, to learn how to use it, and also to move forward and start selling these services to clients. So it's the third element is the execution of all of this. So
Right.
yeah, and I don't believe that's ever going to go away. I think that's going to be a constant theme.
We're really jumping into the whole AI discussion, which I wanted to touch on,
Mm,
because it's a very common discussion topic amongst guests of this podcast.
mm,
But one thing that I've that's really affected me in being this host of this podcast and listening to CEOs talk about AI is to a person. Everybody is focusing on maintaining and if not growing the human element during this time of machine learning and automation. CEOs around the globe, regardless of business, are leaning into AI, but not to replace their people. They're leaning into it to make their people more efficient, more productive, and honestly more valuable to their companies. And you just laid out a beautiful quote. AI gives us more time to be human with our clients.
Mm,
Chris, I
mm,
love that thought.
mm.
Um, uh, expound on that a little bit, if you would, because I would imagine in your line of work, AI could pretty easily displace you altogether.
It is clearly a concern for a lot of businesses, and so my advice is embrace it. We've invested in AI considerably, and
Yeah.
but AI cannot write the goosebumps. Human people will do that. And where, as a team of storytellers, using the techniques that we've created over the years, actually, there's elements of content creation that we want AI to do for us now, because that automation of a lot of the tasks is actually what makes us a lean and efficient organization. So we've embraced it. But when I say we've invested in AI, we've created a platform called Story AI. And what
Mm.
that basically means is that when we're running our storytelling workshops or putting together campaigns or looking to develop ideas, we have trained in this case, it's GPT, which is we have our own kind of platform within based on ChatGPT that
Hmm.
essentially will humanize content as far as you could possibly take it. So the 30 odd years that I've been running this storytelling academy and all my thinking and processes around story structure and all the rest of it has been basically uploaded into this brain that we've now created our own domain with. And when we then take a client's brain, which is their brand platform, if you will, and their
Hmm.
tone of voice, and we merge it with ours. When we then say, okay, let's create a deck or a video script out of that, the first draft of that is staggeringly close to the finished product, because we have
Mm.
all of this work that I've done over the decades, plus the menu, you merge that with the client. We are automating a lot of content that is, yeah, it's a huge thing. And soon we'll see this extended across lots of other platforms, not just ChatGPT, but all the others as well. It's a massive thing for our clients because they're seeing that the first draft that we produce is really, really hot. But what it can't do, and AI will never be able to do, is to capture the human experience. So if I was doing a piece about you, Rob, or your organization, that would require me interviewing you and getting under to the skin of the story, getting your own personal
Hmm.
experience into the narrative. I could spend more time doing that human bit with you and I to create the uniqueness that sits on top of the content that we can produce. So that for me is what's missing and always will be. That's what I mean about giving us more time to be human. Let's do that, because the human experience of what you've been through, Rob, and how I could bring that into your narrative, it would be quite compelling because it would be more of you than it would be anything else. So for me, the human experience is really important part of it. But you've got to embrace AI, and we have in a very proactive way. You say it won't replace jobs. I agree. I think jobs will change, and but there is
I
no
agree with
question.
that too.
Yeah, there's no question that we're seeing this in, many of the larger enterprises that we've been working in, that there has been huge redundancies, and people have been, content marketing departments are being, some of them, ripped apart. I mean, where AI has replaced, and what we're now seeing is an awful, a lot of AI slop, which is basically not good content spreading.
Correct.
And that's worrying because there's been a massive rise in mediocrity from companies who've tried to cut corners with AI, and it's showing. And that's in fact impacting trust of brands, and that needs to change very rapidly, else there'll be a big problem down the line.
Which is exactly the opposite of what Berkeley PR offers to its clients, right?
Indeed,
And
exactly.
is not mediocrity and degraded or degraded messaging.
Really.
I really love your thoughts on this. In fact, one of my other guests on this podcast said this about AI. AI is not going to displace your employees. People who know AI will displace your employees.
Absolutely. That is absolutely the case. Because
So
if we do not, as individuals, as professionals, as agencies, as businesses, embrace it, we are going to be irrelevant in the future. And this is
yeah,
a very important point. But it's the people who, we recognize it and we're changing as fast and as rapidly as we can. But certainly having our own platform gives us a really distinct advantage, because not many agencies, they're using AI to automate a lot of business processes, but no one is seemingly investing certainly as much as we seem to have been in developing a story machine that is as human as you can get it and doesn't appear to be written by AI. That's the trick, because you and I can spot it a mile off, can't we?
yes, we
Mm,
can.
mm.
My wife works in higher education. They're working on ways to discern whether a student's assignments have been written in AI, and there's plenty of
Yeah,
tricks to do that. So yes, absolutely. I'm sure you're seeing
yeah.
a lot of content that's been written that
Mm,
is clearly AI generated, and
mm, mm,
it degrades the client's
mm.
brand.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And it impacts trust, and we can see the brands who become less human are the ones that are really going to, and already will suffer. I think where you can work with AI and add your human nature to it, and the human experience which sits on top of this content, I think there's an opportunity to really stand out. And that's what I'm excited about, because, when we see so much mediocrity there, we tell people this, that they can see it. We can see it in their content. It's not good. It's not a good look. And
Right.
that it's because there's so much of it. I think that being a storytelling agency and PR in particular, we're seeing I hope a resurgence in that, albeit through a different sort of client.
So let's turn the page a little bit and look to the future, right? You've run this business since
Mm,
1988, my goodness,
mm,
and I can still feel the passion you have for
mm,
it.
mm.
What does the next 3 to 5 years look like for Berkeley PR?
Well, I think the next step for us is not to open more offices globally. I think for example, we're very happy with our footprint. What we will be doing is rolling out more services to existing clients who don't want to multi-source different agencies. So most of the services that we now provide, whether that's producing video content or all content marketing, or something that we've just launched recently, lead gen, helping our clients generate leads, not just awareness and trust. What's next for Barclay is bringing all of those services into one integrated whole, and saying to any company that wants to operate and scale up on a global footing, we can basically be the department, their team that can take all of that away. And that, I think, is very important to any company that may have an IPO on site, or a insight, or may have an exit strategy with the
Mhm.
investors. We are the pathway to that can lead them there. And if that's not a long-term relationship, that's fine in many respects, because if the job is to get you, and it has been for a number of clients, to get you to an IPO, for example, then they may well, with that injection of cash, look at some big global agency. I don't know, but we've seen that happen. But we see our role increasingly to help businesses scale up. So the metric is not how many column inches, but how we can partner with the companies to enable them to achieve their business goals. That's the increasing shift. that I want us to position ourselves very much as a partner in growth, as opposed to, say, a PR agency or content marketing agency, or someone's going to help you with your brand message. I think what we want, and where we're starting to position ourselves much more, is a partner in growth, or to partner to scale their organization, and hand over as necessary when that job is done, where there's an exit that takes place. But there's plenty of entrepreneurial organizations already emerging, particularly in the world of AI. So we will dig deep with the countries and investments we've got. We'll dig deep with the tech that we have, but we are positioning our companies for some kind of major event in the future, and we want to work with them in partnership to achieve it.
So you've mentioned two very specific things about your what the future of your firm, and that is you're focusing on a very different ideal customer or client profile.
Mm.
You're moving from a very large customer to a smaller customer, and you're developing more products and services and offerings to service those existing customers. And folks out there in this podcast audience, that's the easiest place to get more businesses, with your existing customers.
Absolutely
So,
right.
Chris, that's a very sound strategy. I know you're going to execute it flawlessly.
Well, I don't know about flawlessly, but we'll iterate as we go.
Yeah, of course.
Perfection in the world of, particularly the entrepreneurial end of the spectrum, or the scale up spectrum, is fraught with danger, isn't it? But it's actually really
It
exciting.
is.
You get decisions made quicker, you act on it, and if it doesn't work, you can pivot and change and keep moving. It's a very dynamically shifting world. But yeah, we'll make some mistakes along the way, but I will try to do it as flawlessly as I can.
No pressure.
No pressure.
So, Chris, before we sign off, is there any piece of advice you could give our podcast audience, other business leaders leading small to mid-sized businesses in their journeys to growth?
Yeah, I would do that, and let me just pick on the one. I mean, I run these global storytelling workshops to help businesses find their North Star narrative, and this is a very big part of what we do to get that really clear from the outset. Now, where most businesses go wrong, when I go and talk to organizations and I look at their content and talk to their executives, they inevitably they position themselves or their brand or their business as the hero in their story. And when they're creating a North Star, I want them to recognize that you are not the hero of your story. Stop bragging about your business, and your About Us will tell you a lot about you, because it would inevitably, it says, look at me, it's all me. And I think what we now need to do is, your About Us it should say about you. Put your customer heart and center of your narrative. Put your customer, your client, position them as the hero of your story, because they are fighting foes, and your role, if anything, is as the guide. You are Yoda. You are not the hero. You are Yoda. You are Baloo or Bagheera in the Jungle Book. Whoever that mentor is, you're going to be the facilitator for your clients to achieve their goals. And if you can put your client heart and center of your narrative, you're halfway there.
Chris, I think that's very sound advice, and I think that's going to do well for many new Berkeley PR customers in the very near future.
Excellent.
Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Again, this was Chris Hewitt with Berkeley PR. He's the CEO and Chief Storyteller. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Rob, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the Think Small podcast, hypergrowth for small businesses. So, what's slowing you down?